Growing up abused and neglected has an almost universal effect of draining people of their innate power. You lose the sense that you are good or that you have agency to make anything good happen. And it takes a lot of will, a lot of resilience, and some luck to remember who you are and to stay connected to your natural sense of what is good, to know that you are good and it's worth working on yourself and worth trying to become more than you are right now. So what do I mean? Kinder, for example, more healed, closer to people, more connected, more structured in your life, more patient, more capable, more creative, more financially secure so you have choices and a little bit of mobility. Everyone wants these things, but when you've been traumatized, it has a way of disempowering your ability to accomplish them. The dysfunctional families where so many of us grew up may not have intended to blot out the good in you, but here's how that happens, okay? I want to outline 5 ways that growing up traumatized can disempower you, and then I'll talk about how to heal. Okay, so here's how it begins. Parents' behaviors, if not their actual put-downs of you, imprint you with a limited or negative vision of your future self. Your potential, your talent is neglected. It's undeveloped. It goes dormant. No one is there to guide you and push you along. You're left to your own devices to learn self-determination and persistence and follow-through. You can see why that's so hard, right? All right, the second way that dysfunctional families can leave you disempowered. Trouble at home isolated you and alienates you from other people. You hide. You learn not to stand up for yourself. You learn to check out, to give up, and put up or shut up. You know, you may have even been told that. You learn to resent. And this guarantees that you're going to be alienated from non-traumatized people who are, more or less happy and functional, who could have modeled realistic goals and healthy relationships for you. They could have offered opportunities for education and career, and maybe you got some of that in your life, but what you learned at home may have undermined that. Having no positive connections with people who are engaged with their potential in a positive way, it's not just about class and money, it's also very much about being around people who are hopeful and confident and who keep their heads together and who have social grace and who earn a living. And this is like medicine to a traumatized and demoralized kid. I know it was for me. Did you have these people in your life? Did you have it at home? When you met people like that, were you able to feel comfortable with yourself around them, or did you have to avoid them because they were so triggering for you? Number 3, in the ways that dysfunctional families can leave you disempowered is now that you're alienated from the people who are like hopeful and have goodwill and, to try for things, what's left are all the other people, the people who are troubled, just like your family, who feel cynical and stuck and who are very prone to discourage you if you were to step up and shine a little bit. That's a phenomenon that happens with people who are hurting because it threatens them, that they would have to face that they also are meant for more in their lives. And that's painful when you can't do it, when you feel like you've failed, like there's nothing you can do. So when you're standing in front of a troubled person like that, shining like a bright light, proving that shining is possible, well, a healthy person feels happy for you and happy to be around you, but a disempowered person compares themselves to you and feels bad about themselves. And all they can think to do is blame you for the way they feel bad. And so they pressure you to feel bad too. There's a lot of peer pressure, not to raise your hand in class, not to show off, not to brag. And this happens to everyone who takes a step up. It's as if there's a nefarious force. That's what I call it. When you move up, it comes and tries to pull you back down. And it might be coming from other people, or sometimes it just comes from within. And at first, it feels like something good, like, oh, thank goodness, I can just relax and quit trying so hard to fit in. Because it's hard to stand strong and it's easy to give in. It's easy to just give up and let go and be resentful. But if you do, that only increases the instability and the drama and the loss and the isolation that you were trying to leave behind. And you start thinking, Well, what's the point? People suck. I suck. What was I even thinking trying to heal my trauma and become something more than I am right now? But of course you have that thought. That's a good, healthy thought that's still there in you, ready to shine. Number 4, that the rough family past can leave you disempowered is you're vulnerable. When you doubt yourself and you're lonely, it becomes a lot more likely that you'll attach to a partner who is negative for you, who tears you down. You meet them and, they feel like home. It feels like love at first sight, but you know why that is. Because it is like home. It's like your family of origin. At least you think, though, there'll be someone to hang out with. And, just about everything that I've ever done that I regret, I did out of loneliness. So sometimes that temptation just to grab onto a relationship because it's there, it's strong, it's compelling. But when that kind of relationship continues, your unmet emotional needs, which is what all of us from dysfunctional families have, it will drive you to bond too quickly with someone you already know is not good for you. You end up talking yourself into it. What's the harm? I could do this for a while. We've all done it before. But then in comes more problems that limit your positive vision of your life. Your confidence takes another hit, and your social circle gets smaller and smaller. And it's one thing to go through this with your family of origin, but when your partner is someone who brings you down, that's how we pass it on to the next generation, okay? That's now generational trauma. A bad family situation, no support, and a repetition of the bad family dynamic with a partner. So at that point, this is the 5th way that the hard background can disempower you, your life choices become survival-based. Quick fix jobs, temporary places to live, short-lived relationships. Have you been through this? I have. I've been through it many times. I was exhausted. I was overwhelmed. My mind was scattered. I was depressed and I was afraid. And I wasn't very in touch with myself. The problems were too big. But sometimes I'd lay awake at night with like this gnawing feeling inside that, I've put together a life, but this isn't right. There's supposed to be more. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I was meant for something better, for more. And I was, and you are too. So how can you overcome the damage to who you really are that made you feel and believe yourself to be less than so that you can become all that you're meant to be? All right, this is my experience. Somewhere inside, we all have a sense of this fulfilled version of ourselves, the ideal version who is safe and happy and accomplished and loved and loving. And even if you don't know how to become that person yet, the fact that you yearn for it means that in your mind, the ideal is part of you. Do you have that? The ideal. And I used to have a vague sense that I was, screwing up somehow, that I was meant to do more with my life than I was able to manage at that time. I felt stuck. It felt so far away. And this went on for years, like 20 years. And off and on, things got hard in my life. If you've taken my courses, you've heard my story. I was a single mom. I was broke. I was drowning in CPTSD symptoms, but I didn't know what they were. And my hopelessness was kind of getting worse and worse, and I couldn't keep up with it. But even then, that sense that I was meant for something better, something more, it wouldn't leave me alone. And I was always yearning for it, as if it was just kind of right there, a little out of reach. I couldn't quite see it, but it was there, kind of, just like a feeling, a thought. Even when I was falling short by, yelling at people, ruining friendships and opportunities, getting mixed up with terrible relationships, abandoning myself. But I still knew there was more for me. And I'm hoping you know the feeling I'm talking about. I'm hoping it's there for you, even if it's like the tiniest little light in there. You carry it in you. It's there in each person, and it's trying to tell you something. Even when everything's hard and you're totally lost, it's like a faint little light showing you the right direction to go, where things can get better. Let's take a small thing. You snapped at someone today, and then maybe you beat yourself up a little bit about how you acted, feeling ashamed. It feels bad. But that fact that it bothers you is also something sacred about you. because what it signifies is that you have an innate sense of what kindness is. You recognize the other person's feelings and their dignity and their worthiness, even if they were, snappy with you right back. Part of you sees it. We all want to be recognized in this way, as dignified and worthy. And when you're too overwhelmed to recognize it in other people, you feel that pang of shame. And that is the best in you reminding you who you really are, even when the worst in you is coming out. That ideal is here, and it makes it uncomfortable for you to fall short of what you know you're meant for, who you really are. In this case, kind. That ideal is in there, and it makes it uncomfortable for you to fall short of what you know you're meant for, what you know is right. In this case, to be kind, to use care with people. Now, this fact is a beautiful imprint on the human spirit, and it is in you. You may be struggling right now, but it's panging you, right? Bang, bang. It's showing you the way forward, who you can become. In fact, it's who you already are. Who you are can't be destroyed, but when you grow up in a dysfunctional family, especially with abuse and neglect, you can lose access to that. You were born with a great deal of power, but what we see so often in traumatized people is disempowerment. Like a blank imagination, a turning away from what is good, even when it's right in front of you. The power just drains out of you, and there's a catastrophic loss of potential when this happens, for the time being, because you can heal. You can get your power back. You can become re-empowered by healing your trauma symptoms and changing your life. Now, you hear that word empowered, and the word kind of bugs me because mostly it's used by people with a savior complex, saying they empowered someone else to become the way they thought they needed to be. But really, you empower yourself. People can take certain aspects of your power, they can take your material goods, they can take your freedoms. And I know that has happened to many, many of you. It happened to me. But healing means that in whatever outer circumstances you find yourself, you have access to your innate power from within, your power of discernment, your power of imagination, your power to recognize truth and change your mind and create a life. Your innate power comes from inside. It comes from freeing yourself, or mostly freeing yourself, of trauma-driven thinking. And the trauma-driven beliefs and emotions that flit through your mind and heart all day that are echoes of the bad thing that happened in the past, you free yourself. Fear, I'm no good. Fear, nobody likes me. Fear, I can't focus. Fear, I don't work hard enough. And fear, I work too much. And fear, it's too late. And fear, everybody has love but me. And these are the thoughts that I put down on paper twice a day, that kind of thing. I put it on paper twice a day and I ask for them to be removed. You can ask like I do, or you can release them. If you want to learn my techniques for how to exactly do this technique, I can show you. It's a free course. It's called The Daily Practice. You've probably heard me talk about it. It's always linked down in the description section and on my website. And it's easy to get to, and many, many people take it and enjoy it. Your trauma-driven thinking that this daily practice is helping with, it is what glues you to the disempowered version of yourself. It has to go. You make a little progress and then you fall back sometimes. But if the terrible things that were said and done to you are dominant in your life, like you keep thinking about them and talking about them and they define who you are at this point, that's going to keep you disempowered. What happened to you is real and it hurt you, but it does not define you. So when you begin to name the trauma-driven thoughts and decisions and behaviors, and especially the fears that you're carrying around and the resentments, something new can enter into your mind. Awareness of who you really are, that more that you have always sensed was possible. But you were afraid to hope for it or try for it. Trauma-driven thinking tricks you into thinking you have no choice, and it scares you into thinking that you can't leave terrible situations. When you have less fear and less resentment, that trauma-driven thinking clears away like a fog, right? And what appears are choices. You don't have to stay in some terrible job. You don't have to stay isolated forever. You don't have to keep putting up with abusive treatment. You may not know exactly what the alternative is or how to get there yet, but when your real self is alive and empowered, knowing that you deserve better, then that first step out of the problem becomes easier. And from there, the next step appears to you, and then the next one. And this is how healing works. One clumsy little step in the general direction of that little light, just healing a little at a time. With healing, you can see your next steps. Your choices appear on the horizon, and that well of innate power can fill up in you to act on those choices. It's one thing to see them, another to act. You need both. You need power to do both. Change happens with a series of small steps that you can take with a spirit of experimentation. That's a good way to do it. You think, I'm not totally sure that this is the right thing I'm choosing here. What happens if I say no to this choice in front of me? What happens if I say yes? Sometimes you have to learn by trying, right? What happens if I speak up when I have something to say? What do I do if I totally just mess everything up and choose the wrong thing? All of these are good actions. You have to crack some eggs to make an omelet, right? You have to make some choices, and then sometimes you have to back up and correct mistakes you made. But with support and tools, you can have the freedom and fluidity to keep making mistakes and trying things and have your successes and take feedback from them and learn and progress and get through that developmental delay that happened to you because of your dysfunctional upbringing and mature and become fulfilled. I call it a developmental delay because in the family of origin, you didn't get to try the things that were necessary for you to develop because you were living in survival mode, or you were getting put down, or there wasn't the money. Now you get to try. And yes, it's scary. And yes, there are risks. But here's what keeps you strong. Good tools. There are many good tools out there. And if you want to use the tool that helped me move out of that trauma-driven state that I was in for decades, it's the daily practice. Sign up for that. Seriously. It's always down below. I'll point to it at the end of this video and you can click on it right there. It really is free. And if you sign up, you can join me in free Zoom calls where we use the techniques together and I answer questions. And it is an incredible experience for me every 2 weeks when I lead those calls. Hundreds of people come. These calls are the great joy of my life. I would love to meet you there. You'll also need support from people in your life who are not part of your trauma-driven world, but part of your healing world. People who are walking the path of healing just like you. Ideally, you want them walking the same path so that you can support each other in trying to apply lessons that you're learning. Some people do that in 12-step programs. We have that here at Crappy Childhood Fairy in the membership community. That is something you might want to check out. I can't say enough good things about the value of being in a group of people who get it, of people you can turn to and say, you know, I set a goal for myself to try to not call this man, and can I get your help? You know, I just feel like I'm going to do it. Help is available. My healing started when I started going to a 12-step fellowship 29 years ago. And you know, at that time, I had alienated all my friends, and everybody needs friends. I needed a place where I could just hang out, where I had somewhere to go. I had a lot of crying to do. I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened, and I maybe wasn't tuned in at first that this is what I needed, but I needed to listen. It was so helpful to me to listen to other people working out their own problems, working that 12-step program. So I then worked the program, and pretty soon I was one of the people comforting the new people. It's been a very positive thing for me. And meetings are available online. They're available in major cities and small cities. And, you know, I hope you'll give it a try. Most people who would be interested in Crappy Childhood Fairy qualify for at least one 12-step program. So I know a lot of traumatized people really don't have cash. And that's why I'm emphasizing free tools and communities here in my programs. The daily practice call, 12-step programs. Support is available if you're ready to reach for it. Now, people complain sometimes that in my videos I describe problems, but I don't describe the solution. So I gave you a little bit here. If you're like me, you know, you don't want to hear a bunch of platitudes about this, like you just need to love yourself like everybody else. You know, that never helped me. Or, you know, hey, come on, everybody's traumatized. Get over yourself. If only, right? So a lot of what people told me would be helpful was vague, and it didn't mean anything to me. And when I lacked the power to go, you know, do the research and change my life and find out what would work, it was so helpful when somebody came in and just pointed to something that was free, that was likely to work. That's what you can do here. Just keep watching the videos if nothing else. I've got your back. I'm notoriously practical. And when it comes to healing, I walk people step by step through practical ways to do it. There's so much to say about the solution. So check out my programs if you want to go deeper, or just watch the videos. Learn what you can today. If you're going to heal from the trauma of the past, you're going to need to get your power back. And what I mean by that is the life force that is generally drained and suppressed by trauma that gives you energy and focus each day to get up and take care of yourself. Now, when I say power, I don't necessarily mean power over other people. I want to talk about power as the inner resource inside, where you know your next right action and you have the strength and confidence to actually take that action. Because it takes power to get up in the morning. It takes power to take a shower, to brush your teeth, to get to work on time, right? It takes power to get a job, and it takes power to leave a job that no longer works for you. It takes power to learn something new, right? To create something, to develop yourself, to be ready for a new job maybe. And it takes power to hold your ground and stay regulated around difficult people. So this is really what empowerment is. It's not something other people give you, like, I empowered these people. It's not really something that can be given. It's something that rises up within yourself through consistent, positive actions in the atmosphere of your basic good self. But power is also something that you can make stronger by steering clear of things that drain your power. So the trouble with CPTSD is it's really common for people to lose their power. And a lot of trauma-driven behaviors do that. They feel like a great idea, but they drain you in the end. So let's talk about CPTSD behaviors that take away your power. I'll tell you a bunch of them, and then we'll go back through and I'll tell you how you get back your power from each of those tendencies that people with CPTSD have. You'll have some of these, not all of them. So let's talk about the CPTSD behaviors that take away your power. And I'll tell you a whole list of possibilities, and you can see if any of them ring true for you. But after I go through them, I'll go back and I'll talk about how to take your power back if that's your tendency, okay? So number one, the way people with trauma sometimes lose their power is believing that someone is coming to save you. And you know, this doesn't just come from Disney movies. It's just coded in there. It is an old childhood memory. And if you were not protected and people did not come to your aid when you needed it when you were a kid, you may have kind of gotten stuck with your hope just kind of flying out of you all the time. You know, sooner or later, somebody's going to show me the boundaries of what's happening here. They're going to tell me how you're supposed to navigate this. And one of the hardest things about growing up, and then as you get older, it's this hard realization that comes when you grow up, sometimes gradually, sometimes it takes a long time, that nobody's coming, that sometimes people can help you when you need help, but mainly evolving your life and becoming who you really are is something you're going to do. All right, number two, this is a tendency that can drain your power, is believing that someone who hasn't apologized to you must apologize, and they got to do it right, or you're never going to heal. That's a really self-destructive belief, and it drains your power. It's basically taking all your power and putting it in the hands of somebody else, you know, with this idea like, and I totally believe you that they probably owe you an apology, but it doesn't have to mean that you don't heal. And to believe that anything can stop you from healing is to give away your power. Your power depends on you, you know, just having a basic mindset of like, anything is possible. I know healing is possible. I'm going to get to work on it. I'm going to do the best I can. And if things don't work, I'll change course a little bit and I'll keep finding what does work. That is a positive attitude. That's, you know, basically all any of us has. All right, number three, for things that drain your power, and it's trying to get approval from people who are mean to you or don't care about you. And I know you have people like this in your life. We all do. If you have CPTSD, it probably starts with parents, there's relatives, there's, you know, people you knew all your life. There's this weird way that when you're not treated like you're a real person, like a real child who has real needs when you're a kid, like the whole world conspires to treat you like that sometimes. Not the whole world, but you're going to keep finding a pattern with that. But if you dance around thinking that it's getting the approval that's going to solve the problem, and you're abandoning yourself, betraying yourself, losing yourself, trying to get somebody to like you, it drains your power. It drains your power. At a certain point, you need to approve of yourself. And to do that is sometimes going to be a project, because to approve of ourselves for real means you do things that you feel good about. You've cleaned up messes that you don't feel good about. So we'll talk about that when we come back through. All right. Number 4, the thing that drains your power is avoiding conflict. Now, I know I sometimes advise people, avoid conflict. Don't go to a family holiday and get into it with people about politics or what happened in the past. Like, that will ruin your day and everybody who's there, including the innocent parties who were just hoping to have a holiday dinner with everybody. There's kids in extended families who are in the same position you were in as a kid, and if you can remember what it feels like when people are fighting. So there are so many good reasons to avoid conflict, but at a certain point, you need to stand up and actually have the conflict and speak up for yourself, or it begins to drain your power. All right, number 5, the opposite of avoiding conflict is fighting everyone, just fighting everyone about everything. And I don't know, I've been that person before, and it's exhausting. It feels like a crusade. It feels like it's just happening to you, and you have no choice. But you do have a choice about who you fight with. And if you're fighting with everyone, you're probably going to drain all your power before you actually resolve anything. I totally understand the spirit of fighting everyone. It's like standing up for yourself, standing up for what's true, not allowing abuse. And yes, you don't want to do those things. But if it's just like across the board, what ends up happening is you lose so much power, you can't take sane action. You can't see what's really happening. So you neither want to avoid conflict or fight everyone. There's this middle ground. Number 6 is using intoxicating drugs to cope with dysregulation. Now, those might be prescribed. We might be talking about alcohol, which is, it's not illegal. It's just intoxicating. And so are street drugs, obviously. But a lot of people will say, I'm self-medicating, with alcohol or weed or what have you. And self-medicating, I just think that's a nice way of saying using. It's just everybody's self-medicating when they use drugs and alcohol. When there's not like an underlying addiction, it's, we call it recreational, but it's always like on a continuum, right? From the first part of the continuing, it's like it starts fun and then it turns into, self-medication and trying to deal with feelings. So I just bring this up so that you can ask yourself, are you using the term self-medication, or are you using drugs out of some belief? I hear this a lot. People are like, yeah, they smoke weed every day, quite a lot, saying it helps with regulation. And I would just say, do whatever you have to do to keep yourself alive. But in the long run, if you're going to learn to re-regulate, it's not going to work with intoxicants. That's just not generally the pattern for people. The ideal state for you is to be able to go, oh, I'm getting dysregulated, and then to have tools to be able to pull it back in, to be able to pull that back in. If you have a tendency to get neurologically dysregulated, you feel overwhelmed, discombobulated, clumsy, can't get your words out, spacing out, you might be having dysregulation from complex PTSD. It's really normal for people who had a traumatic childhood. And I teach people how to overcome that. I'll put a link up above here where you can download. I have a download called Signs of Dysregulation and Emergency Measures to Re-Regulate. And you can get that by clicking that. But stay with me here. If you're using drugs to re-regulate, it's a temporary fix. It's probably not re-regulating you that well. And when you do learn to re-regulate, even a little bit, even if you haven't mastered it every day, all day, nobody has, right? Everybody gets dysregulated sometimes. But with CPTSD, we just want to be better at re-regulating. We want to notice it's happening. We want to get re-regulated faster. The 7th thing that can drain your power from complex PTSD is putting yourself down, where you are having this negative self-talk, that inner critic going, oh, I'm such an idiot, oh, I know this is, or you're talking to people and you're like, excuse me, I know this is stupid, but can I ask a question? You're putting yourself down. And it's a natural instinct that comes with the fawning. There's 4 trauma reactions: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And fawning is when you're like, excuse me, I'm sorry. And putting oneself down is sort of the equivalent of when a dog who's like nervous and jittery, and you go to pet them and they go, ooh, and they roll over on their back. You don't want to be like that. You want to stay in your strength. You want to stay in your power. All right, number 8 is overspending, credit cards, going into debt. That is a way that you lose your power. A person who has a lot of debt has very few choices. Like, you have to stay in some job that you have, because to spend 2 months looking for a different one would throw you so far off financially that you can't even do it. So overspending and debting are 2 things that take the power away, that you could really do so much more with that power for healing. All right. 9, underspending. Yes, the opposite is not good either. You drain your power. And I always say, if you want to know if you're underspending, go look in your underwear drawer. Are they decent? Would you be okay if somebody had to go in your room and pack for you? Does your underwear drawer reflect your basic socioeconomic level? Or is everything shabby and yucky and assuming no one's ever going to see it? You might be underspending. Sometimes taking care of yourself means having appropriate things, not lavish things, but appropriate. All right, number 11 is avoiding your own intellectual growth, avoiding learning. Learning is so important, and you're going to need to learn to heal. So when you're avoiding that, when you're, doing waste of time things like, drinking, watching TV. I love TV. I love TV. There's a place for it. But when you're doing that instead of doing the learning that would help you heal, it's a problem. Number 12, staying friends with people who drain your energy, who diminish you, who put you down, who take a lot from you but don't give back. This is so common for us, but it drains your power, and it starts to affect how you see yourself, who you see yourself as being, what you think is possible for you. All right, number 13, getting into romantic relationships with people who cannot or will not go the distance with you. So if you're taking all your love and all that sort of powerful, potent life force of wanting to be in a relationship, very precious energy that you have, right? Possibly even having children. This is like a very important power and energy that you have. And if you're just taking it and just, giving it to somebody who doesn't care about you, you'll know if you're doing it, right? But if you're doing that, your power is just draining away. And you don't even have that to attract someone appropriate or to give to somebody who happens to show up. You won't even recognize good people who show up when you're completely drained by, obsessing on someone unavailable or staying in a relationship that's not good for you. All right, number 14 is neglecting yourself. If you're not taking care of your health, if you're not taking care of your hygiene, this is really common, right? Your appearance, like, is your hair brushed in the back? In the back. And after the, I'm not talking about pandemic times here. And I saw this once on New Girl where she goes, I'm going to shave my legs, even on the back. Back of the legs too. And I laughed so hard because that was like, yeah, that's a level of self-care that I had to graduate to. And so, we don't just do this for appearances of having hygiene, but we actually take care of ourselves. So we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, number 15, draining your power, is doing too much, overfunctioning. This is where you just feel like, I do everything for everybody. You go to potlucks with way more than other people bring to the potluck. You keep your life incredibly busy. You're pursuing multiple degrees and jobs all at the same time. And you know the signs because you're very stressed out and exhausted all the time. I think doing things and accomplishment and taking action is super wonderful, but there is a line. There's a line where it begins to drain your power. All right, 16, doing too little, getting paralyzed from taking action, avoiding action altogether, just getting into deep procrastination. Oh, it feels so bad to do that. Drains your power. 17 is blaming other people for your problems. And you undoubtedly have problems that are caused by other people. But there can be this way where that becomes a deep rumination. It's a rumination that gets into your bones and you think about it all the time. And you're like, if only this thing hadn't happened in 1981, everything would be different for me. And what that puts you into is somewhere other than right here, looking at your problems and what can be done about them. Losing power. Number 18 is cutting people out of your life instead of healing relationships when healing is possible and desirable. So we've all encountered people who sort of cut and run when the going feels a little bit tense. They are fleers. They are avoidant. And that might be you too. A lot of us kind of swing both ways on that. Like if somebody's fleeing from you, maybe you cling. If they're smothering you, you flee. It's all really common with CPTSD. But our power builds up when we can stay and deepen relationships and strengthen them. So if you're sabotaging all of that, I have no doubt you're losing opportunities in personal power. Okay, my last two have to do with not dealing with the problems in your life. And one way to do that is to stay too busy, running around all the time, overfilling your calendar. Oh, I'm so stressed, I'm so busy. The other way you can do that is by being too involved, too consumed with other people's problems, such as if you're in a relationship with somebody who has an addiction or who's an alcoholic, or who's doing something terrible with the money, and you're just constantly consumed in this, and you're tired and drained and walking around with circles under your eyes because of what you've been going through at home, consumed with somebody else's problem. There is a way to take your power back from that. So let's talk about that. Let's go back through the list that I just gave you and talk about how you can retrieve your power and build it up instead as you heal your trauma. With the belief that someone is going to come and save you, I want you to just tell yourself right now, that is a beautiful fantasy, and I am hereby going to step up and save myself. It's the best thing. So one part of my life where I've had to do this is, Crappy Childhood Fairy. It's a company, and it's a company I love running, but I don't know if I do it the best way all the time. And I used to have this fantasy that if I could just find the right consultant, they would come in and go, I see exactly what you're doing right. I see exactly what you're doing wrong. Do this, change that. And everything would get easy and better. And it never worked. And I tried and tried with some different things and different functions. And what I had to learn is it's actually going to have to be me. Like, it's my company. And if something is wrong, I'm going to need to do the research to understand why, and I'm going to have to come up with the solution to fix it. And I can hire a team and I can have people help me, but it's always going to be that the buck stops with me. I'm going to have to see it. I'm the person who cares the most about it. And so it is with our lives. So if you find yourself thinking, if I could just find the right person, if I just had, $50,000 more, all my problems would be solved. No, probably some very specific problems would be solved, to do with money or to do with now you're with somebody and when you go to the wedding, you have a date, but it does not solve all your problems. And in the end, it's you who's always going to be facing, get this, a never-ending fountain of problems. Like, we're human. Problems come at us, problems bubble up from within. And so the strongest, safest route you can take is just to be very, ride the surfboard of life and just know you're going to have to spot your own problems. You're going to have to be responsive to them and try to embrace that. It's actually the great adventure of life is what it is. With CPTSD, it can feel like, oh, I'm broken, there's no point, or this is too overwhelming. But that's a terrible attitude. Problems will pile up if you can't come and save yourself. And save yourself, it's sort of an exaggerated term. Every once in a while, actually, you do need to save yourself out of a dangerous situation. But saving yourself from a life of mediocrity, a life of quiet desperation, a life of isolation to cope with your triggers, that's worth saving yourself. And you can do that. You can do that, and it's going to come from you. The second thing is, instead of believing that someone has to apologize for you to heal, just accept that they are never going to apologize. If they do, it'll be this incredible surprise, but you'll find out then it doesn't fix you. You don't need it to heal. And the thing is, most people never apologize, or if they do, it's a flimsy apology. It doesn't really speak to the thing that hurt you. So your post-traumatic growth has to do with how you sort of take that thing that happened to you and you're able to, compartmentalize it a little bit. Be like, yes, this happened, but it's not my whole identity. I'm not sitting there like with a festering wound that only some other person, like the person who hurt you. Oh my gosh, you can't even, if they couldn't be kind to you in the first place, are they really going to help you recover? Are they really going to say the words that you need? I have such great news. You don't need them. And sometimes when you can sort of relax that demand on people or that expectation, it does create a little bit more gentleness and space where maybe they would give it a try sometime. But I'm telling you, you probably won't be satisfied, because people who hurt others, it takes a lot of denial to live with oneself. That's what I'm just saying. Occasionally people do the work where they really get it and they can say they're sorry, and they've been thinking about how that must have affected you, and how lovely that they do that. And I think there's a really great connection that can grow with people as a result of that. And it might prompt you to sort of go, oh yeah, that really wasn't my fault. But often it doesn't bring the perfect, like, island landing of perfect ease that we were hoping for. That comes from the healing that you can do, whether anybody else takes responsibility for their actions or not. The third one, what to do to get your power back, is instead of dancing around trying to get approval from people who were never going to give it to you anyway, just stop dancing. Just kind of go about your business and just release them. That little invisible rubber band that you have on them, like, come on, approve of me. Let me know I'm okay, that you love me. You can finally just like, you don't even have to let it snap. Just release it. And you might just be surprised that there's a little more space for people to come towards you. I'm not making any promises. I mean, the people who traumatized you, if they traumatized you when you were a kid, your beautiful child's imagination probably dressed them up a little bit and gave them a little bit more potential than they actually have to take responsibility for what they did and treat you right. I'm sorry to say it, but if you can just accept that that's often the case and go ahead and heal anyway, then anything that they come towards you with, any positive thing that they can contribute, is great. That's just nice. It's just like a cherry on top. The fourth thing, instead of avoiding conflict, do your footwork so that you can have conversations about what's bothering you. If someone's going to hurt you, if you speak up, step away from them. Never try to work things out with people who you think could physically hurt you or who are out to emotionally abuse you. There is no point. If you're worried that someone will abandon you if you speak up, okay, here's my radical advice. Let them. If people are prepared to abandon you because you need to talk about what's bothering you, it's going to be this incredible dance to hold on to them and make them stay. It's a drain of your power if you have to use your life force to try to keep somebody attached to you. If you're worried somebody will criticize you, just prepare yourself to hear it. If you haven't heard of my front porch concept, all right, think of yourself, of your heart, your feelings, your mind. This is your house. And out here you have a front porch. And so if people want to talk to you and you're not really sure if they're safe or what their motives are, you can say, oh, fine. Come. Just picture them talking to you on your front porch. And so you bring your attention out to the porch and go, sure, what have you got to say? And then they say it and you decide, am I going to let this, what they said, or let this person like into the house? Do I let it into my heart, or do I just consider it out here and go, and where I have the option to go, yes, I reject that. You can say you reject it to them, or you can just go, all right, well, thank you for your feedback. Bye. You don't have to get into it with anybody. Because the next one, the fifth thing, if you've been fighting everyone, there's avoiding conflict, and there's coming to the porch for the conflict, and then there's running off the porch and getting out there and fighting with everyone. Well, that probably means you have confusion about boundaries, what you can ask for from people, what it means when you don't get what you ask for, what people's intentions are when things feel disappointing. That is something that can get so messy when you're still like, you got some unhealed trauma wounds there. But fighting drains you. So speaking up is good, fighting drains you, just big messy conflicts. Some of it can't be avoided. It's life, it's part of having relationships. But if you grew up in a household where there was violence or there was, horrible animosity, then sometimes there's this really bad well that opens up when you get into, trying to state what you need or listen to somebody else's criticisms. And it can get so tough. And I really recommend that you learn some techniques for staying regulated when you are trying to communicate things that are a little bit fraught or triggering for you. To stay regulated, you can take that, I'll put the link in here again, to the signs of dysregulation and emergency measures to re-regulate. And at the end of this, I'll also tell you about my free course where you can learn the techniques that I use every day. It's called the Daily Practice. All right. Fighting is a drain. Speaking up for yourself is empowering. taking a bunch of random criticism is a drain. Being able to hear criticism on your front porch can be empowering, and it can be enlightening. You get to have a choice about what comes out and what comes in. And I know how hard it is when you have all that neurological dysregulation and emotional dysregulation from CPTSD. But that's what we do at Crappy Childhood Fairy. We learn how to master that. So everything becomes possible. The sixth thing was, instead of using intoxicating substances to cope with dysregulation, you can learn healthy ways to re-regulate. This, again, is where my daily practice comes in handy. It's very calming and soothing, and you must have a way to calm yourself and to soothe yourself. I'm not saying that like, hey, lady, calm down. Nobody wants to hear that. I certainly don't. But everybody needs to find ease and comfort, especially in emotional distress. And if you've sought help for your complex PTSD symptoms, even if you didn't have a name for, what is wrong with me, you've probably met with the thing where people are just like, calm down, think of this, not that, say this, not that. But it's all just such a jumble when it's going on. So this technique, the daily practice, it's a way of putting in writing what your fearful and resentful thoughts are. And those are just like, when you're dysregulated, when you're in a conflict with somebody. You get them on paper. You ask for them to be removed or release them, depending on, how you see the nature of reality. And then you just rest in meditation for 20 minutes and let your brain recompose itself. And I'm telling you, you will be amazed what a difference it can make just to do this easy thing that takes nothing more than a pen and paper and some 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You can't always do it in the middle of a conversation, but the more you can teach yourself to step away when conversations get intense like that, the better. And you can take a minute. And when I had been doing these techniques for 3 years was when I was finally able to let go of my 2-pack-a-day smoking habit. And I was definitely using cigarettes to stay regulated and to try to handle the intensity of things coming up. I had to have, as they say in AA, a sufficient substitute, right? If your thing is alcohol or drugs, definitely learning how to have that ease and comfort and get those thoughts out of your head is such a great. I know people who do just that to get clean and sober. Maybe you have another technique, but you can use that together. Just to always have, you have your pen, you have your paper, you always have a way to just calm down. And a lot of people will be like, take a deep breath. I just want to tell you, taking deep breaths has never been enough for me when my CPTSD symptoms are upon me. I always felt like that was just like a little bit light. It's a good thing, but it's not enough when the full thing's going on, when you're in bull in a china shop state of mind, right? The seventh thing, instead of putting yourself down to other people, remember I talked about that, putting yourself down and fawning, just focus on letting go of what other people think. When you're working on yourself, you will have a much better sense of when you're doing something you don't feel good or dignified or proud of, and when you actually are okay. When you have confusion about whether you're being a good person and keeping it together, you're going to find yourself paranoid that other people are judging you all the time. And the fact of the matter is, they are. All those sayings like, it doesn't matter what other people think. But actually, if you're like being very rude or cruel or something and other people are going, wow, she's really rude and cruel, they would have a point. I feel like we don't say that enough. And there's so much like on Instagram, it's like, oh, it's, other people's criticism is always wrong. It's like, not so. Sometimes they're right. And CPTSD involves some difficult behaviors. But putting yourself down is never productive. So working on yourself, which you can do it with the daily practice. People do it in my membership program. They do it in 12-step programs. They do it with therapists. You can work on stuff where you're kind of undermining yourself or getting into self-defeating behavior. And every time you resolve one of those problems, it's like, woo, your head comes up, you feel good. And then you don't have that urge to put yourself down to other people. And the fawning instinct, comes from a childhood thing of like, if I'm nice to you, mommy, will you please not be mean to me? Will you please not leave? And it comes from that, right? So when you heal your trauma, when you heal your fundamental security, part of which is to feel good about your own ability to solve your problems, your own ability to take responsibility for how you treat other people. Like that feels good. It feels really good, and less insecurity is there and more security that, you know what? If somebody's just like, won't give me a break, I'm truly doing my best here and they're just endlessly criticizing me. It's just like, here's what you do. Whoop, just let them go. You don't even have to push them away. You can, but you don't even have to. Just release that hope that they're going to come around and like you or approve of you. You need to approve of yourself. And if you think, oh gosh, this criticism's about to come, let me preempt it. I'll put myself down first. It's not going to work anyway. It doesn't make them see what's so great about you. It tends to, they get a little bit of agreement for if they were actually thinking something bad about you. Now, I know sometimes we project that that people are thinking something bad about us, which is another reason not to just jump in there and go, I know, you're probably seeing what a liar I am, or something. And then they'd be like, I hadn't really thought of it, but maybe, yeah. So don't give them that. Just work on yourself. Work on yourself and do your best to be a person you feel good about. All right, in the first round, we talked about overspending, spending beyond your means, going into debt, using credit cards to death. So instead of doing that, here's what you can do. You can begin keeping track of your spending and your bills, what you owe, what you spend, and what you earn. Now, I'm telling you, this is something that when you're in the middle of kind of dysfunction around this stuff, you are thinking, oh, I just can't look. I don't want to face it. It feels so good to face it. It can be really fun to start making a plan to go over, here's what happened. Here's what my goals are. Here's what I'm trying to save. You are not alone. If you have debt, you are not alone. It is so common for people to end up in debt, especially if you grew up with trauma, because first of all, the trauma causes poverty. You may have grown up with sort of like poverty thinking, and then it causes difficulty being in situations with other people. And being able to, be good with other people is so much how we earn money. Very few people have figured out how to do that without actually interfacing with other people. Having CPTSD can interfere with learning, and because, it's hard to pay attention. So you might be working with a few deficits, and you are not alone, and it's okay, and you don't have to be ashamed, but it's just time to start putting it together here. So one thing people I know who have struggled around money and debt is there's a 12-step program called Debtors Anonymous, and they have this thing that people do called a pressure relief group. I haven't done this myself, but I had friends who did it, and I always thought, gosh, that's brilliant. Like everything should have that, where a few people get together every week and they are really open with each other about what they owe. They bring their receipts, they talk about it, like bring it out of secrecy and out into the open. You can do this with any kind of behavior like overeating or an addiction or anything that's starting to take you out of your, operating in your own best interest, is just bring it to the light of day with the support of other people. So I think that I've heard nothing but good things about that 12-step fellowship, Debtors Anonymous. You can check it out. You probably know exactly what to do. You make a budget, you pay down debts. You could do a snowball pay down or an avalanche pay down, and you can research all of that. I really like Dave Ramsey's book. I found that helpful when I got out of debt 10 years ago. It's hard to do when you're only thinking about your money sometimes. So it starts to become like a daily habit. And it's crazy how much when you can sort of put your positive attention on a problem every day and just sort of set aside time to deal with it, things just start to turn around like magic. I remember I started to do things like be careful about what gas station I went to. I used to just go to whichever one was convenient, but then I was like, it probably doesn't break the bank if I spend $3 more on gas this week. Petrol, for those of you in Britain. It probably doesn't make such a big difference, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the thrifty thing. I'm just going to keep doing the thrifty thing. And I got better about shopping and cooking at home. And I even would stop and pick up pennies when I saw them on the ground. Pennies are really not going to change my budget, but it was just the principle of the whole thing, the mindset of me getting into, I'm not going to let money just leak out of me, because that's what I'm teaching you here. Do not let your power drain out of you. And the money that you have in your possession that you are not leaking out all over the place is part of your power. It's part of your ability to make choices in the world. All right. The ninth thing is if you're an underspender, if you're not taking care of yourself, if your underwear drawer is shameful and you really hope nobody ever looks in there before you can get in there and throw out all those ripped, awful old undies and replace them with something new that fits you, that's appropriate, that you like, that you feel good in, right? And by the way, yes, it's possible to be both an overspender and an underspender, to be, hemorrhaging money out on vacations or trying to help somebody else, and then in your own drawers having shabby things and things that are not suitable for a person in your place in life, your age, your more or less socioeconomic level. Do you have a decent pair of shoes that aren't stained? Do you have something nice to wear if you were to go to a dinner party? So many of us with CPTSD don't have that. And I think it got a lot worse during the pandemic when it just became possible to slump around, and maybe because of not feeling great about your body, you just don't have the right things to wear. So I'm just going to say, if that's resonating for you, you can get your power back by taking appropriate care of yourself. Remember I said nobody's coming to save you. People aren't going to come and just buy you a new wardrobe or tell you what to wear. Like, a little time and effort has to go into this. And I'll be honest with you, I am somebody who hates shopping. I get very triggered in department stores. It gets overwhelming within an hour. I don't know what it is. The sounds, the smells, the pressure, the old growing up poor memory of having to find exactly the right one thing that would have to suffice for all purposes, and getting like, I can't find one thing. And if I buy one thing and it doesn't work for this, I won't have anything. I just have this like old stuff that comes up. So how I take care of myself around that is I always shop alone. I drink a lot of water. I pause, I sit down, I take a break, and I get out of there. I just don't try to do it all at once. I will have a tendency sometimes to go, here, I'll just get 2 years of stuff at one store where I've just found a couple of things that fit, and I'll get all the colors and get that. Yeah, that's one way. It's one way, but like doing it that way is not really taking care of myself. And another part of your life to look at in terms of, are you spending a right amount of money, is bedding. Is your bedding suitable? Is it clean and comfortable for you? Is it the right temperature for you? So I've been very poor before and had to use, just a dirty old sleeping bag for a long period of time. And so I totally understand that. Sometimes that's how it is. But if you're in a certain place where you could have those things, but you don't bother to do it for yourself, it's possible that you're underspending, and it's a way that you're expressing low self-esteem and sort of telegraphing to the world if they ever, either keeping them out of your personal space. You don't invite people over, right? That's unempowerment, disempowerment to do that. But yeah, just shutting out parts of your life because you don't have the power to kind of meet life at a good place, at a good level, like wearing a nice, this shirt. I bought this shirt last year at a department store, I remember. And I remember I almost bought like 4 colors of it because I just like this shirt. It's comfortable, it looks okay. But I only bought one, and I thought to myself, if I really love the shirt, I can buy another one. All right, we talked about under-earning. And if you're under-earning, if you're not making enough money, then I cannot say enough about how important it is to have money, all right? A lot of people, and I think it's only people who have unlimited amounts of money, they're just like, hey, money's not really the important things. They have no idea what it's like not to have enough to eat. I do know, and I know what it's like not to have dental care. I know what it's like to have to stay in a bad relationship just to have somewhere to live, and I never, ever want to be in that place again. I'm so grateful to be able to earn a fundamental amount of money that means I have choices about where I am. And today I'm happily married. And so of course we live together, and it's a great situation. I am all about, though, saving for my retirement. I'm all about saving for us so that we have a suitable place to live throughout our lives, and helping my kids through college. And remember, I'm somebody who only got out of debt 10 years ago. So I'm very focused on that, and that's a way I take care of myself. And the signs that I'm not taking care of myself is a sense of dread and worry. And so sometimes maybe things are okay, but I haven't come to peace around it. And so I'm worried, or I'm thinking about what other people have, and I don't have that much. I still don't have the material stuff that I had always thought I'd have in life. I'm not there yet. But with a little luck, I think I might get there in my lifetime. But I also, because I've grown up poor and because I use my daily practice, I have a lot of confidence that I can make a pretty good go of my circumstances wherever I end up. I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to ever be stuck somewhere where I don't want to be. And so I take very good care of my earning. For people with CPTSD, one way it's done is you're not going for the opportunities that you're not working in a job that would pay enough. So I see a lot of people who are working in low pay jobs and then resentful all their lives that those jobs don't pay enough, but they don't pay enough for anybody. They don't pay the level that you would like to be earning, and then staying in the job, staying angry and like, this is not fair. And one example of this is teachers, right? My mom was a teacher. Some of the great people in my life were teachers, but as we know, teachers don't get paid very much. And we know that going in. So what I sort of have to say to people is, taking care of yourself means being very clear with yourself about how much you need to be earning. And if it's more than a teacher makes, then being a teacher may not be a good career for you. You need to go into something that pays better. Now, a lot of careers also require research. If you're not earning what you think you should earn, and the other way this can happen, it's like you don't go for the type of job or career, or you're in the career, but you resentfully just get made invisible by people. You don't get offered raises or anything. As you may have heard, this is very common for women, asking for a raise. It feels too confrontational for many people. It was something I had a hard time doing. But you know what? I got a raise. I haven't had a job with an employer for a long time, but I did consulting. And in many situations, I had to raise my rates over time. And the hardest part of that was the inner job of just deciding that I was worth it and that I would work hard enough to continue to be worth it, that I would deliver work worth that. It was easier for my clients to accept pay rises, an increase of rates from me than it was for me to prepare that self. So it's an inner job. And you do that by doing the research, by dressing the part, by learning the skills that are needed. I can't tell you. I know a lot of people who are software engineers. I live in the northern part of Silicon Valley, and a lot of people are software engineers. And in some environments where software engineers work, there's a huge culture of learning, and people are always learning new things, and they're being cutting edge. And that tends to be a workplace culture that's really going to go somewhere and innovate. But other places end up with a workplace culture, and I'm just picking on tech people here, but this happens in all professions. And people don't learn new things. They're just very protected and defended and like, we've always done it this way. We don't do that. Oh, that's just somebody's opinion about some new thing. And they want to keep everything the same. Well, in technology, that doesn't tend to do very well. In all careers, it pays to read about your industry. It pays to learn about what interests you. And it pays to learn about things that are completely different than the work you do. Because sometimes getting outside of the work you do and learning about something stimulates your imagination so that you can contribute positively. And if you're going to increase your income, then contributing positively to the workplace, to the teamwork, to whatever is going on there is the number one thing that you're going to be able to do. You're going to need to be able to do that. It doesn't automatically get you a raise. You have to be good, and then you have to ask for the money that it warrants. And if that can't happen there, you need to have the guts to move on and find a new job, which also takes research and preparation and all that stuff. But power, I just wanted to talk a little bit more deeply about earning money. So often, people who are in an abusive relationship, and especially if they have children, feel like they cannot leave because they neglected their ability to make money. And neglect is a hard word. A lot of people stayed home to care for kids. But now they must get out. There needs to be a way out. I see nothing wrong with living in a shelter, getting welfare, whatever you have to do to get out of an abusive situation. But ideally, of course, no one wants to stay stuck there for long. It's an act of personal growth to learn things and take action in a direction towards where you're trying to go, which ideally is doing work that is meaningful to you and making enough money to live decently. Very important to be able to live decently. Studies show that beyond living decently, like more money doesn't necessarily increase happiness. Enough money that you have choices and you have sovereignty over your own life. You live where you would like to live. I don't live in a mansion. I might like to live in a bigger house, but I live in a safe place. That's what I mean. Another reason I want to give you for learning more, I talked about learning and neglecting your learning. If you've been neglecting your learning, one reason to really get into it is not only does it help, it put you in a more powerful position to do the kind of work at a level of pay that's more suitable for you, but it makes you more alive and it makes you a more interesting person. It activates something in your brain when you're learning, either reading a book that's challenging or taking a course, if it's online, if it's not. I'll admit, and I know some people have bought my course and they're like, I'm sorry, I never actually took it. And I'm like, I understand, I've done that too. But to actually engage in learning, to actually engage in learning. It makes you more powerful, more interesting. It costs some of your free time. It might cost some of the time that you would otherwise spend socializing, and socializing is important too. But I promise you, when you increase your learning, it will dial up the quality of how you spend your time. It will dial up the quality of how you spend your time, and it will increase the wonderfulness of the people who are drawn to you and want to hang out with you. We're up to like the 12th thing here. If you've been staying friends with people who drain you and making you feel bad, it's time to talk to those friends about how you feel. Or if you're ready to let them go, you don't even have to tell them how you feel. You can just let them go. When you feel better about yourself, your relationships will tend to evolve. The people who were never going to sort of come along and be respectful and kind and supportive of you, they will fade away. They often will fade away angrily. They don't like something. Oh, you think you're so great. But they will sort of take themselves out. The good people in your life, they might be there now. They might be people you're soon to meet, but they will come to you. They will be drawn to you because they match you. They are also at a level of growth and growing that is similar to yours. They won't resent your growth. They will like it. They will want what you're doing in your life to be a good influence on them. And likewise, they will be a good influence on you. The 13th thing, if you've been spending good years of your life in romantic relationships with people who chronically disappoint you, who hurt you, they can't grow with you, they can't commit to you, or they can't commit to themselves even, well, think of them as a room with a sticky floor. It's hard to leave. You can't get your feet up, right? But having a happy relationship begins when you get yourself out. It always feels like you're shutting the door on love, like you're giving up the only chance of love. But if that love is not making you loved, then the shortest path to being loved is out the door of that bad relationship. So if you're going to be in a relationship, aim for one that makes you feel good about yourself. That will be your sign. Like sometimes you'll be not sure, like, we have these differences, we have these qualities I like. But the number one sign is just like check in with yourself. How do you feel about yourself? Does this person bring out the best in you? Do they make you want to be a better person? Do they make you want to be more and do more, right? That's a sign. That's what they're talking about when they say that someone completes you, right? Their very presence in your life sort of draws you forward into a better version of yourself. All right, the 14th thing, if you've been neglecting yourself, your health, your hygiene, your appearance, sit down, get a piece of paper and pen, and make a list of 10 things you can do to take better care of yourself. And this is going to be, you know what they are, but I want you to write them down. Go take a walk, find a recipe to make a healthy meal, make an appointment to get your teeth cleaned. You know what you need to do, but you need to sit down and bring it into your consciousness, into the top of mind. So make a list of 10 things. If you make a list of 10 things and you tape it to the wall where you see it every day, begin to take at least one action a day towards doing that. Make the appointment for the dental cleaning, okay? Go take the walk. Make a date with your neighbor to take a walk. Arrange to walk somebody's dog for them. Just take the action and put it on your calendar to take at least one action on your list of things that need to happen for you every day. If you want to do more than one, great. But I'm always, with CPTSD, sometimes if you're going to be making positive changes, like let it be slow, let it be gentle, so that you don't have to quit and freak out and dive under the covers and hide from everything. Just a little at a time. Titration, a little at a time, adjust, a little at a time, adjust. That's how you can make some changes. All right, so if you've been doing too much, if you've been over-functioning, you've been giving your power away to other people, trying to show them how helpful you are, how totally on top of everything you are, trying to make sure that they value your friendship because, you're going to step in. You hear they're getting married and that's it. You'll take care of everything for them. You volunteer. That's what over-functioning is. And people who over-function will almost always tend to crash. They'll do a whole bunch of stuff and people start to count on them. I've done this and I've had people do it to me. And then boom, all of a sudden they do this like flip on you. They're just like, they're so angry. They're so angry because in their mind, they've been working on this complicated equation where they will not say anything, but they'll be so busy and helpful that something they want from you is going to come their way. And then you have no idea they're even doing this. And so you can't deliver. You don't even know what it is. And they're just like, boom. And then they cut you out of their life. Have you had that happen? Or have you done it to people? So we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. It's very good to be able to be active, to function, but not do too much. Don't do so much that you're putting yourself in jeopardy of having to flip out and run. And if you're connected with somebody, either through your work or your personal life, with somebody who is like doing way more than their share of things, like see if you can talk about that with them. If you can get things out in the open about what they're doing, what they feel good about, what they were hoping would be reciprocal, you might be able to save the relationship from their flip out later. You know, when their only way to set a boundary is to end the relationship. It's so sad, right? But it happens all the time. If you've been under-functioning, if you've been procrastinating, all right, you will think to yourself, there must be a magic pill for this, but there isn't. There's actually, what happens is you break the ice. You have to break the spell. Procrastination can become a spell by getting up and doing one thing. Do one thing that gets you moving and that brings you pleasure. Make it something that you actually like. Sometimes procrastination, it's like such a negative state that if you say, oh, I'm going to go, you know, harvest all the broccoli and eat it for dinner, then I'll be like, no, I can't break the ice. So if you go, no, I'm gonna make brownies and have fun. It's easier to break the ice. I'm trying not to eat brownies myself. But that's the idea of breaking procrastination. You do one thing, and when you're getting started, make it something that gives you pleasure. So like all other changes we're talking about, releasing old coping mechanisms is going to create a little temporary moment where you feel empty. Have you had that happen? So when you finally stop over watching TV or overeating brownies or whatever it is, it'll be like, oh, I don't know, I feel anxious. I feel like something's missing in my life. I need something. I need a brownie. I need Netflix. It feels like that, all right? When you start to feel that emptiness, here's what I want you to remember. It's good. That's really good. The empty pocket is where it's the thing you're trying to fill, and you're going to be able to bring your attention to it. And it's where you can sit and do the footwork to face what is in here and in your heart, what is scaring you, what's keeping you angry, what's keeping you stuck. And this, again, is where I recommend using my daily practice. That's where we get the fearful and resentful thoughts on paper, out of our heads, on paper. Like, you know, you're going to surprise yourself how effective it is for reducing that hamster wheel thinking when you can get it on paper. It's a very specific technique, and I strongly invite you to come learn the specific technique. Don't just like rant on paper. It's not a journal. It's not a journal. A journal is for remembering and recording. This is for, you just take out the trash. You're like, I have fear of this and fear of that, and I'm resentful at so-and-so because I have fear of blah, blah, blah. You get it on paper. You don't even have to write nicely. And then there's a thing that you write at the end that I call the sign-off, where you ask for this to be removed if you're inclined toward a higher power. If you are more working like with your higher self, if you prefer to do that, you can release it, and then you rest your mind in meditation. All right, so that's free. You can sign up for it in the description section. The link is underneath every video I make down there, so you can always find it there or on my website. The 17th thing, instead of blaming other people for your problems, which causes you to lose your power, you can forget the role that other people have played in your past. Yes, I know that's sacrilege, right? You're supposed to talk about it and acknowledge it and grieve it. But I'm going to wager probably you've already done all of that. You've probably spent a lot of time talking about it, analyzing it, reading books about it, hoping that if you would just understand what happened to you enough, if you just were to talk about it enough, that you would begin to feel better. Now that could happen. It's certainly part of healing, certainly in the beginning. But if you've been doing that, if you've been paying for a lot of therapy, you're talking, and you're not finding relief yet, then something else might be needed to move you forward out of that. And that's, again, where the daily practice is. That's what it is. It helps you deal with what has to be dealt with, and then you can let go of the rest. It's a big release. Your healing doesn't always depend on talking, confronting, analyzing. Sometimes it's about naming, releasing, and then moving on with paying attention to your life today and trying to make it the best life you can. So it's a good exercise to look at your problems, even if someone has really pushed that problem on you, and just to ask yourself, what can I do to stop having this problem? Because usually, even if a problem was sort of dumped on you by somebody else's bad behavior, like they're not going to fix it for you. It's you. You're the one. It's not fair, but here it is. Somebody's got to fix it, and it might as well be you. So ask yourself, is there anything I can do to solve this problem right now? And try do what you can to detach it from the person who perpetrated the problem. There's very few problems that other people can solve. Some of the ones like that are like lawsuits and things, and that's one reason I have really tried to stay out of those in my life, because you can really get tied up for years trying to make other people a judge, a jury, the other person, the lawyers or whatever, to see it your way. And sometimes the most freeing thing, the most happy outcome is to be able to just wash it out of your hair, what happened, and move on. Sometimes. All right. The 18th thing, if you've been cutting people out of your life as a way to avoid difficult conversations, well, I want you to be able to have a choice in those moments. You can cut people out of your life, but it is something that you could exercise only when everything else that you could try has failed. So sometimes problems with other people can be worked out. And sometimes problems with other people, sacrilege again, sometimes they can be ignored. Not everybody in my life has my approval or agreement about everything they think and do. But that doesn't really have to be an issue because of the nature of my relationship with them. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to tailor my life around it or make them change to be friends with them. Now, I know there are relationships that do need to end, and that will become clearer, especially when you're using tools to get those fearful and resentful thoughts out of your mind. Those can actually trap you in kind of a strange way of like blaming other people for stuff that's not their fault, blaming yourself for stuff that's not your fault, blaming yourself and thinking they're so great when it is their, it's just like our perception gets very warped. So you need a way to process your thoughts, especially the negative feelings, to process them. And sometimes processing them just means naming them, releasing them. And releasing them doesn't mean you're not going to deal with them or you're not willing to look at them. It just means that while you meditate for 20 minutes and take a rest, you're just like, there, come out of my mind, let my mind come together. And you'll usually find that only some of the things that were bothering you come back. Only some of them come back. And a lot of what's been bothering you, the fearful and resentful thoughts, they just drift away. They're just forgotten. And so when I do my techniques of the daily practice, I write my fears and resentments, I meditate, and I keep a pad of paper just in case I go, you know what? I really do have to send that rent check right now. I forgot. And I can write it down, because even that'll start to be something I must think about. I can't just like relax right now. I'm afraid I'll forget. So you take care of business, and that's how you get your power back. And that's very empowering when you can when you can keep track of what you feel responsible for doing and let go of the stuff that doesn't need your attention. You just took all these power drains out of your life, and you could take all your power back and focus them on the things that you do need to do that are fruitful, that you choose. That is power. I would like you to have the power to save relationships that matter to you. That's a very important skill to have. So you can talk to people. You can talk when there's a problem, and when you trust yourself a little better to be able to handle the emotions that come up when you're honest about your feelings, you can be more confident about going and trying to patch things up with people. When you heal, you will become better at having healing conversations that help relationships and don't hurt them. When you heal, you'll become better at having healing conversations, and you can practice that when you have a little small rift sometimes and work your way up to bigger problems. All right, the 19th thing, if you've been staying too busy to ever focus on what needs healing in your life, oh, this is great. This is your chance. You get to do less now. Being overbusy starts as a way to help someone out or make extra money, but if it's a coping mechanism you're using, all this activity to avoid something in your life, it's time for you to have that quiet time and just let the awareness of the problem show you what it is. You don't have to solve it yet. Just allow it to enter into your mind, and your mind will begin to work it out. As you have less PTSD symptoms, your mind can do these projects for you just while you're sleeping. All right, if you've been consumed with somebody else's problems and it's been driving your life, it is time for you to bring the focus back to yourself. It's one thing if this other person is a child and you're obliged to keep taking care of them. And that's a hard situation, and help is available for that. But if it's a partner or friend, And you can't be that effective in solving problems for them. And there's a high probability that you're avoiding your own life by, trying to be the hero in their life. A lot of people are afraid that if they focus on themselves, they'll be lonely or bored or useless or just too consumed with themselves. But when you avoid yourself like this, you lose all your power. And guess what? You become lonely and bored and unable to be useful to anyone. Now, if you grew up with trauma, a lot of what I'm saying probably sounds good, but you don't know how to actually start. The place to start is with the daily practice course I teach. It's 2 techniques that help you get clear in your mind and calm in your emotions and empowered to take good common sense actions to build your power back up. There's no common understanding of how adults are supposed to heal trauma from childhood, how that happens, where it comes from, what exactly you should do when you want to overcome all the problems. And so if you are trying to heal from abuse and neglect in childhood and all the ways that it's played out in your life and how it still may be holding you back, it's not surprising if you feel lost and not helped by what you've tried, maybe even hopeless. Don't be hopeless. There is hope. Healing really is possible. And I've noticed that different people respond to different treatments. And while most mainstream treatments work only for some people, they don't help everyone. They didn't help me. And yet I had an experience once. It was very strong, of a healing power that rose up in me. It's something that I've felt at different times in my life, but it was the strongest on this one day when I was the most depressed I'd ever been. I was in danger. I was so depressed. And part of what made me feel so hopeless was that I was already doing everything you're supposed to do when you're falling apart. I was in therapy 3 times a week. I was taking medication, and still I was getting worse. I had this frantic energy, like PTSD kind of energy, even though my doctor and therapist didn't recognize that everything I was going through was trauma symptoms, classic ones. I had all of them. And I had this intense, panic energy that was making it hard for me to figure anything out cognitively. So I was trying, but no healing was happening. And if you've been there, it's terrifying. When things are that bad and this power that heals you eventually does show up, you do recognize it. So maybe you felt it in relation to trauma before. Everyone's felt it sometimes. It didn't happen with the therapy, but it happened with something else. And it was a feeling of relief. And I started calling it the good feeling. And it's something like a very soft breeze that runs through you, a calm feeling, a sweetness, no panicking. And for healing trauma or anything, the healing power that gives you this feeling and the part of you that can actually feel it is only the tip of the iceberg. This feeling is natural. It's part of you. It's helped you before. And the only reason you haven't realized it or learned how to access it is because all the information noise about trauma out there. People are just saying all kinds of things that, I don't know, maybe you find it true. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's not really relevant. People often believe wildly different things about the nature of trauma and what to do with it. They say you have to get over it, but how, right? They say it's trapped in your body and you have to release it, but how? And they say you need to see the connection between what happened to you and what you're struggling with now. But is knowing all that really all you need? And they say trauma damages your immune system and your ability to focus and connect with people, and I think so too. But even if you know that, what good is it if you're too down to make some heroic recovery? How are you supposed to know what you need? What do you do? And this is where that healing power comes in. You are designed to heal. You were born a complete and whole human being. There is a true you, and as you grow and develop in your life, even with the wounding, physically, emotionally, that you might have suffered through accidents and trauma and addictions and mistreatment, your body and your mind and your spirit still remember who you are. And they will always try to come back to that, back home. That is you. So think of grass. People in my courses know I often describe things in metaphors. And my metaphor for your natural healing power is grass. Now, if you take a big piece of black plastic and you lay it on top of nice green grass, that grass will wilt and then turn yellow, and eventually it will die, or it will appear to die. It can't get sunshine. It can't get water. And let's say a herd of cattle is walking all over it back and forth on top of the plastic every day, and the earth is packed down, and nobody even remembers there was grass under there after a while. And then one day the wind kicks up and it blows that piece of plastic 20 yards away, and the rain falls and it soaks the earth where the old roots of the grass are, where the grass seeds may have been dried up for months dormant, and the earth softens, and the roots and seeds absorb the rain and they soften, and the next day the sun comes out warm, and what happens? The seeds sprout. Roots go down, little tiny sprigs of grass begin to form and start reaching up toward the sun, and the growth is quick after that. What is happening? The grass is healing. It can't help but be grass. Just like you, it can't help but be you. It is natural for you to heal when you have what you need. It's as natural as it is for grass to return when it has what it needs: water, sunshine, not so many hooves tromping on it all the time. The grass is designed to be grass, and you are designed to be restored too. So long as you live, that is what you are meant to be. You don't have to believe in anything metaphysical to agree with me about this. Think about a time when you skinned your knee or your elbow, and it hurt, and your skin was open, and it was vulnerable to infection, and yet your body knew just what to do. And it sent all the right elements of red blood cells and white blood cells and down into your capillaries, and it circulated, and it managed to clean out the dirt all by itself. It knew what to do. And then it used some of that blood to form a scab, and cell by cell, your body restored your skin to its original form. That's like you with trauma. Are there scars sometimes? Yes. And are there wounds that can't heal? Yes. Some things. We can't really predict what they're going to be. It's worth a try to heal everything that feels broken. Think of someone who loses a leg. They can't grow a new leg. Not everything grows back, but they can have a prosthetic leg that allows them to have a full life anyway. And that's also like you and your trauma. You may need workarounds, but you can live fully. Abuse and neglect in childhood hurt you, but you're not meant to stay stuck in hurt. You might not know how to heal the hurt, just like you don't know really how to heal skin. Do you know how? No, you don't have to know. It's just something that happens. It's natural to heal. We don't live forever, but while we live, we're designed to heal. So what is that power, the wisdom of your body, that feeling of comfort and peace that comes across your spirit, your emotions sometimes when things are hard? That life force within you. I hadn't thought about it very deeply until my life force was threatened. Back when my kids were small, I had a surgery that ended up with terrible complications. And it had to do with the birth of my first kid. And though my baby was okay and still is, it didn't go well for me. And I ended up very injured and had to wait several years before I could get all the damage repaired. Well, that's what the surgeon tried to do, but that went badly too. And there was a life-threatening complication. And I survived, but with even more damage done to my body. So they did another surgery, and then they had to do another different one. And they were trying to solve problems from the last surgery. Each surgery was leaving me a little worse off than the one before. So they'd plan another surgery, and all in all, I had 14 major surgeries. And I was in and out of the hospital over a period of about 4 years. And during that time, I ended up in the emergency room dozens of times. I was bleeding out. I had life-threatening infections. I had to get myself to the hospital by myself while all this was happening. And it was it was the hardest time in my life ever. I was newly divorced then, and I had small kids, and they were with me at home, and I didn't have help. And so there was just so much trauma going on in my life. And at that time, I had a surgeon who couldn't figure out why each surgery was failing and why I was getting more and more damaged each time they tried to fix the damage. And I know now that it's normal to have trauma in your life interfere with the ability to heal. My body was trying to heal, but it just couldn't. It couldn't quite, get over that hill. And the sadness in my life and the loneliness and the intense stress and fear going on and the helplessness, the worry about caring for my kids adequately while I was, trying to handle all these crazy medical problems. It took everything I had. But the first time I really felt that healing power in me was one night when I was hospitalized. I was there for a full month. This was July 2005. And I was in so much pain and I was weak and I could barely even walk to the bathroom. I was so immobilized because they had to put these big inflatable wraps around my legs to squeeze them and release them so that blood clots wouldn't develop while I was laying there so long. And so much had gone wrong after one of the major surgeries. So they kept me there and they had me lie very still. This was at UCSF in San Francisco. It's an excellent hospital. I had an excellent surgeon, but still. So I hope I never have to go there again. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the people there who helped me, especially the nurses. A good nurse is a powerful blessing when you're struggling to get well. There were some that I will never forget. And some I can barely remember, honestly, because I was pretty doped up on morphine a lot of that time. But they'd come into my room at night when they had a little bit of free time, sometimes one or two, sometimes more of them, and they'd give me emotional support just because they had 5 minutes. Some of them asked if they could pray, which of course I said yes to. And there was a woman who came each week and played the harp in the hallways, which I loved. That was the highlight of every week for me during that time. It was beautiful, and I felt so much love coming from her willingness to do that. She was just a volunteer. And everyone seemed to conspire to help raise my spirits. Even the woman who came in to clean my room at night would lift my spirits. She would sing a little bit. She was kind. And I was really grateful. It is really hard to be in the hospital, and it's hard to be alone, and it's hard to be in pain. When you lose a lot of blood and you have to be transfused, it really takes the strength out of you. And I've never been so weak and tired in my life. I just couldn't even lift my arm. But my body was working very hard to heal me. And that life force, it was there. I didn't feel energetic, but there was a very strong force going in and healing me and restoring me, bringing me back to nearly mint condition. So mostly I slept. That's a good thing to do when that level of healing is necessary. But I just had no energy. Then one time I woke up from sleeping and I felt something. I felt like, all I can call it is life. I felt life in me, a little more than I'd had when I went to sleep. Oh, and what a good feeling this is, a little bit of life. So I slept, I ate a little bit, I slept again. And after a few days, I was able, with a walker and all my tubes hanging off a pole on wheels, to walk out into the hallway. And all the nurses cheered when they saw me come out of the door there. This was huge progress for me. And I was exhausted just from that. Got back into bed, passed out. The next day, didn't pass out, I went to sleep. The next day, I walked 20 feet up the hall and then back to my bed. And a couple more days, I walked all the way around the nurse's station. And it was like the hardest thing I ever did, but it felt so good. It's so good to move and to feel the life in yourself, in your muscles, in the organs that were happy to have me, vertical and moving. When I was exhausted again, I'd lay there thinking, come on, healing power, come back to me. Come fill me up again so I can walk a little more. And you know what happened? It came and filled me up again, a little stronger each day. A very distinctive power, and it helped me heal my tissue, and it helped me heal my body's functions and get my blood back to where it needed to be, and it helped me recover from my ability to compose my thoughts and my intentions. Like my mind was just, even the thought of trying to send an email or something would just be like, I just can't even think about it. And that came back to me. And it was healing the mental exhaustion and helplessness that I'd felt. Even though my circumstances hadn't changed, I still didn't have help at home. But that feeling like I was never going to be okay was lifting. And I was now beginning to make plans for when I got home, and I was taking actions to prepare myself to go home. And when I'd get overwhelmed and scared, I'd get very still And that power would come back to me then too. And it helped me to trust I was going to be okay. And it helped me to sleep when it was time to sleep. Very precious thing. And it helped me to stand up for myself and find a ride home when the day finally came for me to leave the hospital, which I was very excited about because it meant I could be with my kids and sleep in my bed. And the kids had been staying with their dad the whole time I was in the hospital. So, it was a little too intense for them at that age to come in and see me that messed up. So what is that power that brings us back like that? I've thought about it so much. And there's this saying in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Now, I don't lack for bread, or I haven't since I was a little kid. But before those years I was in and out of the hospital, when I was devastated emotionally and physically and financially, bread took a new meaning. I used to wonder, what do you mean? What does that mean? Is it symbolic of something? For me, it is that power. It's that life force in me, the energy that comes back. It's what I need to do what I'm meant to do. It causes me to breathe. It makes my heart beat. It keeps going. It's the power that brings my body back from injury, back from the brink. And it gives me power, a daily dose of inner power to be strong again and to work and care for my kids and cry and have friends. And later, that power was there to help me find love again, to have joy in my life, to have less trauma, and to have the insight that seemed to come out of nowhere, how to heal, that I now share with you. It's a power that is here with me right now, so that I can even be with you. It doesn't come naturally for me to just turn on cameras and talk to a camera. But I feel very much that I'm with you when I'm talking about this, and I want to encourage you. I want to remind you of your daily bread, this well inside that refills and refills again. It's the strength to be who you were made to be so long as you live. And you have this. Maybe you've been through terrible times and had to fight to get through it. Maybe you're in that place right now. And whatever you're doing to cope with the injury of trauma in the past or in the present, know that there is a healing power. You may need to be a little quiet to feel it. It's very small at first, very subtle. I found it's good to pay attention to it, to wonder about it, to ask for it to strengthen in you. And so long as you are breathing, to treasure it and revere it, because it gives life to you. And it helps you overcome what has happened to you and eventually to blossom through whatever path of healing you're called to follow. And it always finds you because your life is important and it is infinitely precious. It's all too easy to get sucked in to terrible relationships with people who treat you badly, especially for people who were mistreated and neglected as children. You may find yourself with narcissists, manipulators, liars, people who just plain grind your spirits down. But so long as you stay hyper-focused on what's wrong with them and what they did, the more you may come to see yourself as helpless, and the longer you may be participating in the sabotage of your own future. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Naomi, and she writes, "Hello, Anna. For the past 10 years, I've been with a narcissist who also has CPTSD. I saw the red flags, ignored them, tried to fix him, as I thought it was pretty normal considering all the abuse and traumatic experiences I've lived through, including repeated abandonment, emotional, sexual, and verbal abuse, and basically I became the parent figure and slave to my family." Okay. I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on with Naomi. It sounds pretty harsh. "So I threw myself into relationships to fill my own void and my need to feel loved, and always seeking to gravitate towards the handsome players, as I knew that they wouldn't change, but I loved the attention and love bombing. Fast forward to me at 32 meeting my last, quote, fiance, the narcissist. I got sucked in. I thought it was real as he was much older and actually available, not in a relationship that is, or so I thought. I got very upset when I found out he was separated but not divorced. I told him that I was serious about our relationship and that I needed him to be divorced in order to move forward. Long story short, we moved in together. I found out he was talking to other people. I demanded that he end it. He hid it better. I was going to end it, but suffered a major concussion and was unable to work. He was paying the bills, so I waited it out. In the meantime, I left for 1 month, got some distance and clarity. He knew that I was serious about leaving, so he purposefully got me pregnant. We're going to come back to that. I tried to make it work for my baby, but the treatment got worse after I had my baby. He became mean, abusive, verbal at first. My baby is now 6. The abuse got so bad that I had to call the police and he went to jail. For the past few months, he stayed in my basement due to the winter and lack of apartment rentals. I have been clear that he cannot return, so this April 1st, I found him an apartment to move to. He was very upset when the time actually came for him to pack up and leave. He became verbally abusive and he was starting to get physical. I reached for my phone to call the police. My phone called my coworker, who called my boss and the police. He's gone now, but my baby is now showing major aggression, anger, and now verbally abusing me as well. How do I help her if I myself am struggling? She's flying off the handle and very hard to reach. I know that it's CPTSD. Do you have a program for children specifically who are actively going through this? Okay. All right. And that's from Naomi. Thank you, Naomi. I'm just checking something because I think you said that the child is now 6. Yeah, not a baby. All right. Interesting that you say that it's a baby. All right. So, Naomi, this guy sounds abusive and unable to be on his own feet, and I understand why you wanted to leave and I understand why you called the police. What I also see is that you have a blind spot here where you don't seem to be aware of your own power to make choices for your life. And while I can see that this person you were married to had all kinds of bad things going on and hurt you, you seem to have given all your power and all the blame to him for the way that you stuck around. So this is going to be one of the tough love fairy things where I come through. I get it. I'm not trying to deny that he was abusive to you, but I'm concerned about you because you don't seem to recognize your own agency, and I see you having almost no boundaries. And I don't think things are going to get better for you or your child. I'm not really going to address the child. How children get better is because their parents, in this case, you, are self-regulated and smart and wise. What your daughter needs to see is a woman who has boundaries and takes care of her life and lives free of abusive people. That's what they need to see. Not all entangled with abusive people and getting right back involved at many turns here. So let's go through some of the things you said that flagged my attention here. For 10 years, I've been with a narcissist. Okay, so once you believe somebody's a narcissist, staying with them doesn't make sense to me. He also has CPTSD. Okay, CPTSD people could be narcissists or have narcissistic personality. They could have narcissistic traits, all things that happen. I saw red flags, ignored them. Okay, right there. Now, I don't blame you early in relationships or youth or anything that you saw red flags and ignored them. That's what we do. We didn't ask to have this like red flag detector broken in our minds, but there it is. So you were just behaving like we do. You tried to fix him. That's what we do because we don't want to leave. So we go into magical thinking that, aha, I have the power to fix this person and make them into the person I want them to be that would make me feel good about myself. And what that's called is codependence. When you say, as I thought I was pretty normal considering all of the abuse and traumatic experiences I've lived through, including repeated abandonment, emotional, sexual, and verbal abuse, and basically became the parent figure and slave to your family. I'm very, very sorry that happened to you. That will absolutely do a number on your ability to perceive things accurately. But I'm here to help you. I'm here from the outside to say that your old belief that considering what happened, you were pretty normal. I know what you mean. I'm the same kind of person. But the hardest thing for me to confront is the way my thinking would completely distort around romantic relationships. And I would just find myself in these embarrassing situations where I didn't even want people to know that I had done it again. And I didn't see it coming because my mind would do a distortion on reality. That was an expression of my CPTSD. It was hard to detect at first. And then once I saw it, I was like, what can I even do with this? I don't know why I do this, but I do it. And I can remember very clearly so many conversations where people tried to say, this doesn't look good, Anna. What are you doing? Something, what's a nice girl like you doing anything like this? They thought I was pretty together, but they didn't after a while because I was ending up in relationships like that. So if you spent 10 years with someone you consider to be a narcissist, I want you to hear this in the gentlest way possible. You're normal for us, but there's something wrong. There's a trauma-driven behavior really, really messing up your life there. People who are in that hypothetical land of normal, healthy people, they leave people like that. They don't even get together with them. They're able to read the signs earlier. And for all the people who are going to sing in the chorus like, oh no, they deceive you. Anybody who thinks that it's impossible to detect is bonding with people too fast and then rationalizing their own victimhood by saying there isn't another way that you could actually get to know people and have more discernment through professional help, friend help, tools, books, reading. There are sneaky people out there, but they're not all of them. They're not all of them. So the fact that you ended up with one is pretty consistent with the abusive childhood you went through. The fact that you didn't leave and tried to fix him instead, also consistent. So totally off the hook. But here you are, you have a kid, so the pressure is on to get it together. So you met this guy. You say you used to love these handsome players and you knew they wouldn't change, but you loved the attention and love bombing. So what you're describing there, also a trauma-driven behavior, is love addiction or sex addiction, where you have an attraction to the trouble and the artificial high of somebody who love bombs you, and then the strange pull and attraction and mystery of somebody who's also unattainable to you, but handsome, like it's sexy for people to be abandoning. And I call that the eroticization of abandonment. It's a very unfortunate kind of kink, really. It is. It's a sexual preference that is very unfortunate, doesn't work well, makes everybody miserable, and whatever can be done to heal it should be done because it just hurts people. Most of all you. And now you have a kid, like you getting abandoned for your emotion to feel alive or to feel connected to the world. It really hurts your kid, creates instability. You being angry, you having a lot of drama, as you've had with this ex-husband, is not good for your kid. So the kid doesn't need a program, you need a program. And if you have doubts about that, you could certainly get professional help, but I would strongly advise you that professional help can't work on kids when their parents are caught up in the madness. So it starts with you. It starts with you, Naomi. Okay. So you met this fiance, the narcissist. I guess you never got married. I'm not sure. You got sucked in. And okay, I know that is the language of narcissist culture. People who watch a lot of narcissist videos love the concept of hoovering. Hoovering's a great concept because it doesn't recognize that you're playing a role in it. Your own difficulties, your own lack of perception, you are sucking into it. You are getting drawn up in the exciting energy of it. I thought it was real as he was much older and actually available. And then it turns out he was lying about that. He was separated but not divorced, which is ambiguous, which is so typical of the sorts of people we go for when we like the abandoning type, when we like the type that's not real, that's not really there for us. I told him I was serious about our relationship and that I needed him to be divorced in order to move forward. I get it, my sister, but here's the thing. When you demand that somebody change their status for you, you're actually trying to force them to be the person that you hoped they were when you met them. And I'm telling you this from my own very hard experience. You cannot really force that. The person who is actually free and available has chosen that all by themselves without some woman that they're involved with pressuring them about it. The very fact that you have to pressure him is why this is a bummer for you. That you're not really looking for the fact of his divorce. You're looking for the energy of his divorce, the energy of somebody who's emotionally available. But also, there's this irony here that I want you to see because I want to help you just recognize how injured your perception is here. You're like, he's a narcissist, he lies, and I pressured him to get divorced and be with me, like that would fix it. I so know what that's like. And I know as you are learning, it doesn't get you what you want. It doesn't get you what you want. If a person isn't the person that you hoped they were, it's time to go, oh, I was wrong, and leave. Because love is not just sitting there trying to strong arm somebody into being who you hoped after you sort of wake up and realize your life is connected to them now. They are not who you hoped, or you would feel really happy about them already. They are not that. Now, that's not to say in established couples that sometimes things are going to come up where you're like, honey, I cannot tolerate this thing about you, and if we're going to be together, I need you to change it. But I still say, under all circumstances, that needs to be open-ended. A boundary is when you say, I'm not going to put up with that. It's not forcing somebody else to do it. It's not forcing energy. It's just like, look, I'm not going to put up with this if that's what you want. So I'm trying to understand why you say you were serious about the relationship when you believed he was a narcissist. Why would you be serious about a narcissist? I'm not saying this because I'm confused. I'm saying this because I'm challenging you to admit that you're having distorted thinking there, that you're simultaneously thinking he's a horrible person and that if you could just get control over him, he'd be great. So maybe I'm hoping when you hear me say it, you can hear it. Like, that's not rational. That's not rational. He's got real problems that make you very unhappy. You wanted seriousness. You moved in together. I lived with a lot of people back in the day. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Living together, once you have a kid, it creates a very gray area where you're trying to sort of get some needs met without the commitment. And if you're somebody who struggles in relationships and has connection wounds and wants commitment, which if you have a kid, if somebody's going to be in your life at all, I'm telling you, you can't be having, people just kind of tromping through, here or there. So bad for the kid. Like, you have this higher mission now. So commitment's important. I'm just saying it as an aside, but okay, you live together. Could have been a good thing, but not with somebody you believe to be a narcissist. That's kind of like jumping into the pot. So then you found out he was talking to other people. I assume you mean like, I don't know, porn, flirting, online dating, I don't know. And I demanded that he end it. Okay, so you're not even married to the guy, and he's doing this behavior that's abhorrent to you and unacceptable, and your solution is to demand that he be somebody different, rather than see he is not who you want, he is not who you need, and he keeps showing you this. So you demanding that he ended it, that's like an archetype of a person who is in denial, who's just so angry, it's not going their way. So you demanded it, and then he hid it better. Well, yeah, that's the nature of making demands of people who are sort of like, I don't really know where he was coming from, and he can't speak for himself here, but apparently he didn't want to leave. He just wanted to have his cake and eat it too, from what you're telling me. So he hid what he was doing. He hid the cake, and that's what liars do. So you said, I was going to end it, but suffered a major concussion and was unable to work. He was paying the bills, so I waited it out. All right, so right there, I understand your reasoning. I've been poor before, but I just want to tough love you and say, so you knew that you didn't want to be with him. And when you wanted somebody to take care of you financially, you hid from him that you were leaving so that he would do that. So you're kind of playing the same game here. You're eating the cake. Now I need the money. Now I know how hard it is to strike out and, when you have a medical stuff, but if he had died or if he had ended it with you for good, you would have had to find a way to survive. And I just think you could have. I think you would have. And even if it was a women's shelter, and it would have been better than, deceiving somebody so that they would financially take care of you, which gets you more entangled. In the meantime, I left for 1 month, got some distance and clarity, okay? He knew that I was serious about leaving, so he purposefully got me pregnant. So I'm just calling you out here. If you were serious about leaving, you would not have had sex with him. Now, perhaps he sexually assaulted you and you literally had no control over it, in which case you did soon call the cops, but that's the end of the relationship. If somebody sexually assaults you and gets you pregnant, just being sexually involved with somebody who you want to leave after you got clarity is just a complete loss of boundaries. And again, I just think a lot of people are going to go, but all these things happen. And I know there are these cases where, we're desperate. But the thing is, if it's ever going to change, if we're ever going to heal from this way that we just get like rocked around on this horrible stormy sea of life because we don't have boundaries, because we're not clear, because we don't see that we have agency to change, that's what I want to share with you, Naomi. You do have agency. You have the power to change your life. You have a child now, so this is all water under the bridge. But going forward, everybody, don't have sex with people you can't stand and who you consider dangerous narcissists. And don't be financially dependent on them if you possibly can survive without it, or at all. Even if you have to go to a shelter, it could be better. You're talking about somebody who's abusive. So this is often why people stay in abusive relationships, is because it's so difficult financially. So I've had to leave situations in my past before, and it was different. I had to stay on couch. It was pre-kid. And there was a period after I had kids where there was a terrible financial episode that befell my life. Not actually my fault, but I was out of work, 2008, house lost its value. And I started to think I might have to do that again. And I know how terrifying it is. There's many things that I would put up with to avoid that fate. But what I'm hearing is that this history of ignoring red flags, I demanded that he change and he didn't. And this could have, you had so many opportunities before this child came along. So, okay. I understand though. I tried to make it work for my baby. All right, but still, when you have a baby, people, you don't have to make it work with the other parent if they're abusive. That's the wrong thing to do. Any idea that you're doing it for the parent, for the child's sake, to expose a child to abuse is a terrible thing. Much better that they should have a peaceful household or two peaceful households, if that's how it works out. So the treatment got worse after you had a baby. That is typical with abusers. He became mean, abusive, verbal at first. Baby is 6 now. So I'm just saying something about this. Your baby's not a baby. A 6-year-old is a child and has awareness and will remember what's happening here and has starting to have a will of their own. And the abuse got so bad that I had to call the police and he went to jail, the ex. So for the past few months, he stayed in the basement. Okay, so you had to call the cops and then you let him stay in the basement. And this is when you started the language again of pretend boundaries. He couldn't leave because it was winter. People can leave in the winter and the lack of apartment rentals. People can leave when there's a lack of apartment rentals. They don't stay together with the person they abused. He was very upset when the time actually came for him to pack up and leave, I'm sure. It's hard. Breaking up is terrible, and trying to exit from an abusive relationship, there's going to be a lot of crazy going on. And that is why I so strongly recommend that you get help from professionals, whether they be police, therapists, or a women's shelter, or a homeless shelter, because sometimes men are abused too, some kind of shelter where you have professional help to guide you. I've known people to leave abusive relationships. They had to do it over 6 months, secretly taking one little thing in their purse at a time to a secret apartment till they could finally do it, because they were literally afraid for their lives. And there's, people, it comes to that sometimes. So I've been clear that he cannot return. But see, what I would like you to get clear about, because he's going to try to return, I want you to get clear that you will not let him in. Okay? It doesn't matter what you believe he can and can't do. It's what you will allow him to do. And I think you mean that, but I'm going to say the words and try to help you be very clear so you can't go into the fuzzy thing that we people with trauma do around these issues. So on the 1st of the month, I found him an apartment to move into. So right there, okay, I get it. I realize that sometimes, if somebody's really a sponge and helpless, you do that. But right now you're very, very involved in trying to help the person who abused you. He was very upset, verbal abuse. Then he started to get physical, and you tried to call the police. It went to your coworker who called your boss. So now everybody knows, which I think may help you. Because one of the things about being in an abusive relationship is there's a strong incentive and desire to hide from other people how bad it is, right? And so now you've lost that luxury, they know. And I think that could be helpful. It'll be helpful for you to be able to accept what's happening and get help and open up. You said, my baby is now showing major aggression, anger, and is now verbally abusing me as well. So you didn't tell me what the custody arrangement is. It sounds like your ex is so broken down, there is no custody, or that you don't have a custody agreement. And since you're not married, these custody agreements can be pretty muddy. And I really, really encourage you to get legal help with that, to start deciding about custody, because if he's an abusive person, and I know all of this stuff is expensive, but again, a women's shelter, because of what's been happening and calling the cops, you are eligible to get some help, I do believe and hope, from a shelter, so that you can start to get some boundaries around your relationship and your custody agreement. So one really important thing is to shield your child from drama. Shield your child from drama. You're going to have bad days, Naomi. It's going to, he's going to make you so mad with his drama, his attempts to draw you in. You're going to have bad days. And so your job now is to start developing this really strong boundary, is that I feel this way inside. I have a trusted person or two I can talk to about what's going on, and I don't express it in front of the kid. Now, even so, kids will begin to pick up. Their nervous system is very connected to yours. So if you're full of anger and anxiety, they're going to feel that. If your kid is raging right now, well, that is a normal thing that happens with kids who have been exposed to violence and raging parents. So you may end up deciding to get professional help. And I don't know if your kid has CPTSD right now. I couldn't diagnose it even in an adult, let alone a child. But I know your kid has been going through a lot of drama at home, and that's really hard. And that behavior sounds like the way kids act out when the trauma is starting to manifest. So I'm so proud of you for taking this seriously and deciding to make changes. So a structured, safe, no drama home environment. You may be forced to share custody. And I actually have a course called Positive Shared Custody that I made before Crappy Childhood Fairy with my ex. We went the journey from lots of crazy to totally, cooperative parenting. And he's a family law attorney as it happens. And we made a little course about how to do that. If anybody's interested, contact my team at hello@crappychildhoodfairy.com, and they can connect you with that. So I suggest it for you, but that's all about how to have a peaceful, functioning two-parent family for the sake of the kid. And there's a lot of practical strategies that you can use not to get wrapped up in the drama. It sounds like he's not somebody who can be trusted to hold up his end at all, but these are strategies that can help no matter what's happening. You don't let yourself get drawn into arguments. You focus on, a few specific outcomes that you need, like, do you have the backpack? Do you have the homework? Do you know where the red tennis shoes are? Who's going to take her to the birthday party? Who's going to have her at Christmas? That sort of thing. And this is the sort of thing that makes life really hard when you don't have a clear plan. If he's somebody who violates it, doesn't respect it, there's secondary plans you can do to still stay sane no matter what. You can stay sane and protected no matter what. That's your objective right now. So you may decide with your child's school or doctor, perhaps talk to a doctor about whether anything's done, but you will get whatever they say it is. It starts with you, Naomi, being centered and grounded inside. So what I want to recommend to you and leave you with this, anybody who needs to know how to get really grounded and get free and have a way to discharge intense emotions that come up around the drama of other people, is the daily practice. The daily practice. And this is the twin techniques that I use to transform my life. I've been doing them 30 years now. And my son just gave me some flowers. We're going to have a birthday dinner for me because my birthday's coming up. And people are coming over, and several people in my family do the daily practice. And we do that before everybody eats. And it can be a lovely way of life. It took a long time before I had other people who do it too, including kids. So give it a try. This is a way you can kind of bring the energy freak out down. And it's my observation through myself and a lot of other people that when you do the daily practice and bring that calm and centeredness into yourself, that the kids feel it. They don't have to know the details about it. You don't have to tell them. Whatever you do, don't talk about these problems with your child. And you have a way to discharge it. And Naomi, please get help. If you can, therapy, if you can, women's shelter, if you can, 12-step program. You certainly would be welcome to join my membership, where many people are going through similar things and working it out in their lives, and they support each other. You'd be most welcome here. There's always a link to membership down below.